Well, wow, that was a dramatic Australian Grand Prix, wasn't it? Right from the offing, I mean, Max Verstappen was on course for victory number 10 consecutively. It looked like that would be the way from the get-go, didn't it? And off he went right from the race start. And then, surprisingly, after lap 1, we just seen him make a mistake where it looked like making a mistake. And then we just cut and seen Carlos Sainz have a run on him, make the pass. And it was just massively surprising, and you thought, well, Max will pin him back. But it wasn't to be, was it? Absolutely incredible. A brake failure that exploded, didn't it, on the way into the pit lane for Max Verstappen. And from there on in, you knew that the fight was on for another win. And Carlos Sainz, what an incredible job. From having an operation just 2 weeks ago, appendix out, he put in a brilliant performance all weekend, wasn't he? Fantastic in qualifying, right up in there with Max Verstappen. And then when it counted, he made the move on Max, and then it was just absolutely phenomenal from there. Really controlled the race fantastically well. Kept his teammates in check, kept everyone behind him in order. At one point, he was sort of 7, 8, 9 seconds ahead of his teammate. He was absolutely flying in that early part. Strategy helped him out really, really well. It was a tremendous job from the Ferrari team. A 1-2. Charles Leclerc lined up and finished second place. I mean, that is just an incredible job from Ferrari. A 4th place start for Charles. And yeah, they actually pulled the strategy right as well, didn't they? They got the undercut on Lando Norris on his car. That got him up into past Norris and into the second place. And he kept that at the end, and it was probably crucial that they did that at that stage, because towards the end the McLaren of Norris was absolutely flying, wasn't it? It looked like the Ferrari had just enough in pace, and I think they were probably managing more than they shown, because Charles Leclerc right at the end put in the fastest lap, and then we got that dramatic finish at the end, didn't we, with George Russell dropping it. That's under investigation, that with Fernando Alonso potentially brake testing him. I'm not sure. When you look at the replays, it's strange because he does slow quite a lot compared to what he's done the lap before, so be interesting to see if any penalty sort of comes from that from Fernando. Mercedes adamant that he brake tested Russell and that caused him to go off and the collision. Let's see what happens from that side of things, but it was a horrible day for Mercedes, wasn't it? A double DNF, Lewis Hamilton out with an engine failure, lap 17, and then George Russell drops it, and a big crash from him, and that'll be under the cost budgets. You know, these are the things that you really cannot afford. You know, you want to make sure all your cars finish, and yeah, big repair job on that car for Mercedes, and a horrible weekend over for them. But Perez was the big disappointing for me, wasn't he? Because these are the days where Verstappen, you know, has a car issue, and you think, right, Perez needs to step up and show his worth. And he finished, 56 seconds behind the Ferrari. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. He started 6th, he finished 5th, and he effectively only made up the position of his teammate DNFing, didn't he? He got that 3-place grid penalty from qualifying, so instead of starting 3rd, he finished 6th for the block on Nico Hülkenberg. Yeah, he stopped. Came up P7 in his early stop. He had a nice move around the outside of George Russell, and then he passed Fernando Alonso, but then didn't really seem to pull away from Fernando, because at one point Fernando was back in the DRS zone and putting pressure on Perez again before the second stops. And after that, he didn't even really push again, did he? After that, pitted after lap 36 and came out P9. He made up only paces because the guys in front of him hadn't passed, and yeah, it'll be really, really disappointing with that. And I think Red Bull will be disappointing with that, because you'd expect better from him in that car, especially with what Max has been doing. I mean, who knows for this weekend, because the Ferrari was really, really quick. It was close between them, but you'd always felt that if Max had, you know, had a car that was under him, he'd probably run away with it again. But it wasn't to be, was it, for Max? But yeah, disappointing from Perez overall. And Aston Martin, I think this was a good points overall, wasn't it, for them? It was poor in qualifying, but absolutely brilliant in the race. Fernando Alonso with the strategy of the day, wasn't it? It really worked out for him. He started on the hards, dropped a couple of places early on from the start, didn't he, because of a bad start, but then the virtual safety car came out when Lewis Hamilton had his engine issue. It was almost perfect timing for Fernando Alonso. He got the switch, a cheap pit stop, and that really pushed him up. Ran into sort of 4th, 5th place at that time early on, and just really kept it together. He's obviously got that investigation going on with what happened with Russell, but fend him off and looked like he would have held on to that even towards the end of that, even without that. I know George was in the DRS and it looked mighty quick there, didn't he? But Fernando, absolutely wily old fox, a brilliant P6 finish from him, made up 4 places from his P10 start. Lance Stroll, a solid race from him really, ran in 8th position mostly and then finished 7th after George Russell's crash made up a place on that one, so a solid weekend from Aston Martin. And then coming up to McLaren, Lando Norris did an absolutely fantastic job, didn't he? Finished and started 3rd. It was great from him. He was dropped a place a little bit early on. He got undercut by Piastri, which was a bit of a strange strategy call early at that point, but he was mega quick then. After his second pit stop, he was pumping in the fastest laps, closing in on Charles Leclerc, but just couldn't get quite close enough. I mean, he got to about 2.5 seconds to Charles Leclerc, but then Leclerc went off, pumped in the fastest lap, and then it was just not really enough for Lando Norris, but it was actually brilliant to see them right in the fight, kept Ferrari honest right throughout that race. It was a brilliant job from Lando Norris. His teammate Piastri had a fantastic weekend, I suppose, overall, his home race. I think he'd be a little bit disappointed to finish 4th in terms of he was 10 seconds then back of Lando Norris. He got the undercut and was in prime position at that point, but then again he's struggled a little bit again in comparison to the race to his teammate Lando Norris, finishing about 10 seconds behind him in the end, but a really good P4 finish from him, and then a really good performance from the Haas team. They both finished in the points. A P9 for Nico Hülkenberg, started in 16th. He again pitted on the VSC. That worked out really well for him. He was up to P12, but honestly he was on the wrong tyres at that stage really, because he started on the hards, went to the mediums. He was up to P12 and they did a brilliant job. The two Haas teams, they Haased out Alex Albon out the points, didn't they? They worked brilliantly together, him and Kevin Magnussen, and brilliant P10 for Kevin Magnussen also. So some good points in that car showing very good race pace. They'll be massively impressed with that, because they, coming into this season, just didn't really have that hope of doing anything really fantastic, did they? But they're picking up points. They picked up a point last weekend for Hülkenberg, some more crucial points, 3 points for them this weekend, so they'll be going very happy with that. On the flip side of things, let's look at the Alpine team, and Pierre Gasly started 17th, finished 13th. Again, he pit under the VSC, so that worked out really well for him. He went really long on that medium tyre, so that kind of helped him a lot. But then he got a 5-second penalty for crossing the pit exit, which he did earlier on in the race weekend, but he got a reprimand for that in the race. He got 5 seconds. Overall, you can say it looked well. He made up 4 places, but it was 3 from DNFs effectively for Pierre Gasly. His teammate Ocon had an issue in the brakes, a slow stop. He had a tear off in his brake duct, and I think that's effectively just didn't really help him, and he finished last. So another disappointing weekend from them. On the flip side of that, the Racing Bulls, Yuki Tsunoda, what a performance from him. A P8 finish. He was running in the top 10 throughout that time, mostly P9. It was a really good race, solid points. He'll be massively happy with that. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo, he was actually really good race pace in the end, wasn't it? He finished 12th, was closing in on Alex Albon. I think he might have had that because Alex was struggling on the tyres at that point, but it's a shame his qualifying was so bad, because I think given the way the race went and so many DNFs, it potentially could have nicked some points as well. Either way, he would have been right in the fight with the Haas team. So they've getting back in that fight, aren't they, the Racing Bulls? It's a decent weekend for the team. Fantastic for Yuki. Daniel Rick beaten by his teammate again, but better race pace for him on that one. And then going to the Sauber team, and it's, that sticky wheel nut is just absolutely horrendous. It's costing them, isn't it? Because Valtteri Bottas should have really been, or could have been in the points at that point. He had 2 really slow stops. One of them, even what they were cheering, was 3.8 that they managed to get out. They've got this issue with cross-threading wheel nuts, and they've got to redesign that one. It's not a quick fix, but I'm sure they really need to get to the bottom of that, because that'll cost them all the way through until they fix that. I mean, you can't be losing 10, 15, 20 seconds on pit stops just because you're scared you might cross thread your wheel nuts. But they took it really slow. Same with Zhou Guanyu. Finished 15th in the Zhou Guanyu. The only positive, he wasn't last, I suppose. But yeah, otherwise it was a disappointing weekend for the Sauber team. And finally, the Williams team for this weekend, it was just Alex Albon in the race. He started 12th, finished 11th, just out the points in the end. He was up to P10, wasn't he? And it was just the car being, again, what we saw last season, quite hard on its tyres compared to the rest. And that really is what cost him. He got Haas out there, that I said earlier, isn't he? He was double teamed by the pair of them. Some questionable driving and defending by some of them, but that's the way it goes. Hard racing. There was no investigation or anything by the stewards on that one. He was massively disappointed, but just missing out on points. It's been a horrible race weekend for Williams, isn't it? The big crash for Alex meant that Logan Sargent didn't race. And there's a lot of big questions thrown at that, like, you've kept Sargent on thinking he's the man to take you forward, but when it comes to it, they've sort of lacked confidence that he's the man to take some points. I think they absolutely made the right decision keeping Alex Albon in, because he is really their number one driver, and he's the one that's going to take them to some points potentially. Just missed out this weekend, but a decent P11 finish, but I think he'll be disappointed considering you had 3 cars right ahead of you go out, the 2 Mercedes and a Red Bull, so they're weekends that don't happen and come around very often. And he missed out on some points. And the final thing on this one, which was very different to what we got last time out, and I think they probably learned from that, where we got the red flag with a couple of laps to go, and we didn't get that this time out, did they? With George Russell was effectively just blocking the whole racetrack, wasn't he? But they carried on, because I think it was just the last lap effectively. They carried on under the VSC, and we didn't get a last lap red flag finish and restart, did we? Because that would have been absolutely crazy if we'd got something like that. The Ferraris would have been most disappointed with that, because they had the most to lose, didn't they? They were comfortably a 1-2. But Australia threw up a fantastic race weekend again. I absolutely enjoyed that. It was brilliant watch. Red Bull's reign comes to an end, doesn't it? Ferrari and Carlos Sainz does it again. I mean, the man without a race seat, the man without an appendix, just hadn't taken out 2 weeks ago, was just, absolutely phenomenal. My driver of the day, everybody's driver of the day. It's just, you can't look past that. Absolutely fantastic job from him. The way he managed it from start to finish was absolutely phenomenal, and it really shows like he's been the man, hasn't it? When things are in the air and there's opportunities, he's been the man to take it, and he did that in Singapore for Ferrari. He's done it again this weekend, and actually he's the one that got the boot. And it's gonna throw some questions here, isn't it? Did they make this right choice in keeping Charles Leclerc over Carlos Sainz? Time will tell on that one. Charles Leclerc's not had the most brilliant start to a race season, has he, so far? Carlos Sainz, though, absolutely credit to him. He's been absolutely on it. What a fantastic job from him. But there we have it. That's the review of the Australian Grand Prix. It was a brilliant, exciting, action-packed race. I absolutely loved it. Let's see what comes of this Fernando Alonso incident and George Russell. You'll find out, and I'll keep you updated, and we'll go through that on the driver ratings video that's coming up early next week. But thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. And we're heading to Japan next. Is earlier than we had for a long time, isn't it? So I can't wait for the action. A circuit that I absolutely love. The only figure of 8 circuit on the F1 calendar. It's absolutely mega races there in the past. Can't wait for the action to get going there. Thanks for watching. See you next time.